Going to St. George was a growth opportunity. I know God placed me there because wherever you are, it's where you're supposed to be.
Oh, once I lived in Cottonwood and owned a little farm. When they called me down to Dixie, it caused me much alarm. To hoe the cane and cotton, I right away must go. But the reason why they sent me, I'm sure I do not know.
Welcome to Not Forgotten, a weekly podcast sharing the stories of a place known as Utah's Dixie, and brought to you by the Doc Booth Foundation. Through stories as universal as they are personal, this podcast is dedicated to the memory of legendary family physician Dr. Craig Booth and to defining, preserving, and perpetuating the spirit of Dixie embodied in his life and work.
Hi, I'm Lyman, host of the Not Forgotten podcast. For more than 40 years, I've been writing and publishing with the intent of connecting landscape and story in the American Southwest. I believe the words spoken by a character in a story by Barry Lopez. Everything is held together by stories, he said. That is all that is holding us together, stories and compassion. Dr. Craig Booth was a man of stories and compassion. His personal story is one of the many that have made Utah's Dixie what it is, and his compassion is at the heart of that elusive entity we call the Dixie spirit. Most of the key moments that are noted and remembered in a community's history have to do with the creation of institutions or roads or water and power facilities, the arrival of national chain stores, or the election of new leaders. For me, growing up in this isolated corner of southern Utah, one of the most seminal moments of our history occurred in my early teens when I stepped into what was still thought of then as the new college gym and squeezed into a bleacher seat next to my dad and sat there wide-eyed with my jaw dropped and witnessed basketball played at a level I'd never imagined. The moment Lionel Hollins stepped onto the basketball court at Dixie College in 1971 was a pivotal moment in this community's history. In a singular flash of amazing ability, dignity, and beauty, he broke open the imagination of an entire generation of southern Utahns. And more than a half century later, that generation still remembers with fondness how a young man from Rancho High School in Las Vegas came to Dixie College and taught us not only how the game could be played better, but how we could and should become better in ways that transcend a simple sport. What a great moment this is for the Not Forgotten podcast, to be joined in the studio today by Coach Doug Allred, the legendary basketball coach at Dixie College in the 1960s and 70s, and to also be joined by the great Lionel Hollins, who's seated at his desk in his home in Memphis, Tennessee, and looking at us from a computer screen with his trademark smile. This is a perfect convergence that I've dreamed of for a long time, to sit down with one of Dixie's greatest coaches ever and with one of the greatest athletes who ever came to Dixie. Lionel Hollins came to Dixie College in 1971 to play for Coach Allred. His time and experience here put him on a trajectory to Division I glory at Arizona State University in 1973, and he became a first-round draft pick for the Portland Trail Blazers in 1975. He became an NBA champion with the Trail Blazers in 1977 and an NBA All-Star in 1978. After 10 successful years as a player, he became a coach, a college coach, and then a successful coach in the NBA. But for a generation or two of Southern Utahns, Lionel will always be remembered for the joy, the excitement, and the enlightenment that he brought to Utah's Dixie in the early 1970s. And today, Lionel, more than a half century later, we'd love to hear you and Coach Allred reminisce about those days and talk about how a black teenager from Las Vegas ended up in the homogenized culture of St. George and what sustained you here and how your experience here played into your future success.
Well, I could start out by saying that I was lightly recruited out of high school, but not by UNLV. And most of the schools that were recruiting me, I had no interest in going to at that particular time. Utah State, Weber State, University of Utah, Creighton University, if I remember. And these coaches were calling Coach Booth and asking why was I not available for meetings that I had with them. And I told him that he asked me, and I said, well, I don't want to go to those schools. And later on, he called me in his office. He said, there's a school in my hometown, St. George, Utah, and the coach is very, very interested in having you come and play there. And he's willing to give you a scholarship, and he would like to come and talk to you. And I agreed to come. I don't know why, but I agreed to come. And I mean, to talk to him. And then he was recruiting some other of my teammates. And all of them went up to St. George. I went with them, and we went to visit. And I liked it. And I had good conversations with Coach Allred. And then I decided to go to school there. And about 6 of those guys, maybe 7, decided to come as well. Not all playing basketball. And, one played football, 2 played football, 1 played baseball. But things didn't work out for them, so I wound up staying. But Coach Allred just had a personality and a persona that was like a lot of coaches that I had. And he was very honest, and he was very forthright in how it was going to be and what he was going to do. It wasn't trying to oversell me and tell me, I don't think he ever told me I was a good player, but he just said that he had an opportunity for me there. And so I decided to come with those guys. And I remember coming up and my teammate, Willie Hall, and I used to go running back down where they kept the cows and horses south of the university. I got bit on the hand by a mosquito, a spider, or something. My hand swelled so big. And I remember telling Coach Allred about it. And I don't know if he remembers, but, I got it taken care of and everything was all right. But the reason I came is just because I had friends and it was close to home. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I really wasn't going to go to college at all. I was going to just get a job and go to work. But I remember Coach Booth told me that getting a job at one of those hotels would be there when I'm 50. And he says, this opportunity to go to school and 1, get an education, and 2, further your athletic career, which could go very far. And that was the words that said, give it a try. And so I did. And it was not easy. And then it was harder because of the people that came with me, because we were in a predominantly white environment, and we were in a Mormon environment, which we had been in anyway, growing up in Vegas and going to high school. Every one of my teachers and coaches went to Utah State and BYU and what have you. So that wasn't the problem. It was just that it was foreign to us, because even when we were in high school, we were bused out of our neighborhood, but yet there was a lot of us that were there. And then when school was out, we went home. And, we had a lot of racial issues when I was in high school. And so, I wasn't looking for that when I got there. I just wanted to not be harmed. And, and I wasn't. And people were very nice to me. The majority of people, there were people that were just standoffish, but nobody attacked me and nobody verbally, nobody attacked me. I wasn't worried about anybody attacking me physically. Maybe it might have been one or two that thought about it. But I, the guys that I came with were messy, to say the least. They had a lot of bitterness, which I did too, but they carried their bitterness in a different manner. And I was staying off campus, and I wasn't around most of them all the time. And I took a lot of heat for not hanging with them because I would hang with the guys that were trying out for the basketball team, that were going to be on the basketball team because of their uh, scholarship portions. And so after we started tryouts, my friends started going against me because they said that I played harder when I went against them than I did when I went against the white players. They said that I passed the ball to the white players more than I passed it to the black players. And so it got really heated until one day I came home and my roommate, Willie Hall, decided that he wasn't going to take it anymore. And he had been listening to everybody else. And I come in and he had the music up so loud, and it was on my stereo. And I turned it down. He got up, turned my stereo off, and then he proceeded to turn his radio on. And he turned it on as loud. And he said, "Now turn that down." I said, "What's wrong with you, man?" And he proceeded to tell me all that I just told you guys. And I said, "Man, that's not true." I said, "I'm just playing basketball as I always have." And he didn't hear it. And we got into a little wrestling match. And the guys who stayed in the dorm, they broke in the door. It wasn't hard to get in there. And they broke us up, and he left. And then he moved out. I don't know where he moved to, but he moved out. So I was had no roommate. I was solo. And then, but he was on campus. He went, and all those guys were staying together, and they want me to come to the room, and they would do, they had the hot plate, and they would cook, and they would go to the store, and they would steal items. They would steal items from the student union. When we go to shoot pool, they wouldn't pay, and later on they started having some issues, and they wanted me to go to Coach Allred because they said, "Well, you're his favorite. Go to him and get us out of trouble." I said, "Man, you guys did what you did. I can't go to Coach Allred and get him to get you off just because you think that he likes me a lot." And so eventually, after the first quarter, they all left. And there was one other black guy on the team, and he was from down Needles, California. And he was I don't know why he came to St. George personally, because he was a radical Black Panther. He wore black tam, and he wore a black leather jacket all the time. And ultimately, he left too. But and so I was there by myself. I had one other friend there, Ernest Jackson, but when the quarter ended, he got caught stealing some books out of the student union, and they had a project for him, and that was go out and clean all the weeds and the garbage from the Dixie College sign that was out on the corner. And he wasn't going to do that. He said, "They're just trying to put me out there because I'm black." I said, "I'll go with you." And so I went with him, and we did it one day, and then he wouldn't come back. And next thing you know, he had driven back to Vegas, and I couldn't get him to come back. And that was the end of anybody that was, from my neighborhood, and also that was black. And that first year, we had a lot of sophomores on the team, or a few sophomores that had been the core of the team. And here I come in there, and I'm running and jumping and carrying on. And I don't know if they had resentment toward that, but there was times when I got fouled hard, and I was ready to fight. When somebody didn't throw the ball to me when I thought they should have, I was ready to fight. And one day I threw a ball at a guy, and they took his head off, and coach threw me out of practice. And, that first year, he threw me out of practice a few times. He remembers one, and I'll let him tell the story. But, coming from where I came from, I was never the quitting type. We had a lot of adversity all the time, and you had to deal with it, and things didn't go our way, and we had issues at school, but you still had to come back the next day. And I always came back. I never was mad enough that I was going to quit because I had no future anywhere else. And and so, some of the younger guys that were my age took me in, and we became friends, and we had so success as a team. And then those guys left, and on campus, most of the people were standoffish, except for the basketball players. But as I stayed there, and people got to know me in the student union, got to know me, uh, socially, just by being around other people, not necessarily them socializing with me, they could see that I was okay. I wasn't a bad guy. It was not anyone to fear. And I just remember they were so enamored with me. They played with my hair all the time. They couldn't believe what kind of hair I had and how it was. And they asked me all kind of personal questions. I'm like, man, I'm just like you guys. And then I remember at practice, I got cut. I got hit over the eye and I bled. Few of those guys were naive enough to believe that my blood wasn't red like theirs. I was like, what color did you think my blood was, right? And so we had those kind of conversations. We had girl conversations. And it just was an interesting year. I had work study. Coach asked me if I would take some work study, give some scholarship money back because I was, I don't know what they call it, I was poor. But so they gave me some work study. And Coach was a little bit upset. They gave me a job washing all the uniforms and the practice gear and towels for the basketball team. I didn't mind it. I've had low jobs before, and it allowed me to go in the gym and be in the gym for a few hours. I'd put the clothes in the laundry and I'd do some homework. When I put them in the dryer, I went upstairs and I started shooting and dribbling and whatever I did. There was never anybody in the gym. And so I loved that opportunity to have that time, but Coach thought that, they could have given me a better job, but it worked out. And I had a few professors that slighted me on grades, blatantly won. And I dealt with it. I didn't get upset, but I got a job at Denny's. We'd been there to eat. And the guy, I don't know why, I always needed money, so getting another job wasn't nothing new. But the job was at night, and it was a night shift. And I go in there, and the students would come in. I was washing dishes and cleaning up in the back. And every time the students would come in, the guy would come back there and call me, come out here, get your mop and come out. And I would go and I'd mop and all the students would see me, right? It was like he was trying to humiliate me in front of the students, which he couldn't do because that kind of act didn't humiliate me. But it made me not want to work for him. I never told Coach Allred. I just left and never went back. And I never got my paycheck. I didn't even want the paycheck or anything. So I had some of those issues around town. I had the slurs called at me when we go to, the movie theater. We go to Frost Top or wherever. So, I was used to that because I had that in Vegas as well. And so it wasn't overwhelming and it wasn't brutal and it didn't make me feel bad. I just understood that what they thought about me. But as the year went on, I met a couple of girls and I tried to take them on dates. One girl agreed, the other girl like, no. One girl agreed, and we were in Cedar City playing Southern Utah State freshmen. And I told her when I got back, we'd go out and get something to eat. So we got back to St. George. I go over to the housing unit that they lived in, and she wasn't there supposedly by her roommates. And I was like, what do you mean? I just talked to her on the phone. She's sick. They come in, and I said, all I want, because they were trying to keep me from going out with her, and they were telling her that she shouldn't for all the reasons that you can imagine. And so I said, I'll leave if you let her come down and talk to me. If she tells me she doesn't want to go out with me, done. So she came down and she told me, and she said, well, my friends don't approve. their parents don't approve, my parents don't approve, and I'm afraid if I go out with you, it'll get back to Provo, where I'm from, and my parents will make me come home. And I walked out the door, and that was it. Coach, one of my fun moments, though, was family home evening. And, you know, people don't, I'm really funny when I want to be. And I would go to, they had invited me. There was some guy, and they had it at the east of the school, condos. And we'd go over there, and I would bring my 45s because I also played music on the school radio station at night. I would go and be on there for an hour playing nothing but rhythm and blues and jazz and soul music. And I never got any beef about it. Nobody ever cried at the radio station, didn't say anything. But I'd bring my records over in my little portable record player, and these guys were like, this is family home evening. We're going to learn about the Mormon church. And I said, we're going to play music. I said, this is a time to get together and have fun, not to, And so after a few times, I wasn't invited back. And I had issues. I remember we were in not issues with race, but when I say this about the uncomfortable situations, Sherry Atkins was one of my teachers, and she would express to me that you could be you're quiet, you don't say much, but you're smarter than you let on, and you need to let your voice get out. So she gave me some confidence in being who I really was truly inside. And I always remember her and her husband, and they were always nice to me. But we went to El Centro, California. I'm not going to tell the one story, Coach, about me coming to your room. You remember that?
Right.
You'll have to tell that one. But in the game, we're playing, I think, Glendale College from Arizona. And we're going for a loose ball, and a guy hits me with his head in the mouth and puts my teeth behind the bottom teeth. My top teeth were behind the bottom. And I'm in a panic because I'm claustrophobic anyway. And now I can't get my teeth back, and I'm, just panicking. Coach comes over, and he helps. They don't go completely back, but they go straight. And I wasn't panicking. Then when we got back, Coach got a dentist. He fixed my teeth and put some braces on them to hold them in place for a while. And then we played Southern Idaho, and we played Phoenix College, and Coach Allred wouldn't let me play. The two best teams we were going to play that year, and he held me out of the games. The only games I missed while I was there. And then later on, after the season, I had my tonsils taken out. He took me to the doctor. Everything was swollen. I go to the doctor. He needs to take out my tonsils. And I'm 18 years old at the time. And so we're in a hospital. It looked like an army hospital. It was just rows of beds with curtains around them. And I remember there was this older gentleman in the bed next to me. And after I come out of having my surgery, he was gone. And I learned that he had passed away. I didn't know him or anything. He was just an older gentleman that was in there sick. But anyway, Coach Allred was the first person at the sitting by me. And he had some ice cream, which he lied. He told me if you eat ice cream, it'll soothe your throat and make everything easy. He had also lied, said that when you have your tonsils out, it's not so bad. And that was not true. But he and his wife took care of me. She cooked broth. Coach would come across campus from his house and bring me the broth. And I lost all this weight when my tonsils were out. And I was needing to build back up. But that was the start of a relationship because Coach was doing that to the person, Lionel Hollins, and not to the basketball player, Lionel Hollins. And when I went home, I got a lot of flack for being in St. George. And I might have well had a MAGA hat on because they couldn't believe that I would go to all white school and that when I came home, they would say, well, you're trying to be white. You're talking different than you did when you left. I'm like, I'm talking correctly. And so I had those issues even at home. But going to St. George was a growth opportunity. I know God placed me there because wherever you are, it's where you're supposed to be. And all those other schools wasn't where I was supposed to be. This is where I was supposed to be to learn and get out of my narrow-minded way of thinking and environment to expand alone in a setting where either I was going to flourish and grow or I was going to wither and quit. And I never viewed myself as a victim. Even all through my life as a young kid, I never viewed myself as a victim, and I never had problems with coaches as some of my community neighbors did. It was like, coach won't let me. I never had a problem. I just went out and played, and I did the best I could. And so my thing was I was going to go wherever I was going, but I was treated more offensive on the sporting field in high school than I was in St. George. And coach never made me feel bad about myself. But I had coaches telling me that after I didn't play well, I fumbled one time in a football game, cost us the game. And coach said, I couldn't even go back to my neighborhood. They wouldn't let me come in my neighborhood. And then, when we won, it was like, you're a credit to your race and all of this negativity that was going on. And we were just past Martin Luther King. We were just past John F. Kennedy and R.F. Kennedy and the whole Malcolm X and the Black Panthers and the civil rights laws that were brought into being by Lyndon Baines Johnson, the voting rights laws. So we it was a switch in systemic policies, but it wasn't a shift in the mindset of the people. And I always say you can make a law to make somebody do something, but you can't make a law to make them change their hearts. And that's where we were. We were kind of twisting, and one side was fighting to not let it be changed. Another side was fighting to have the change. And so, that was the turmoil when I came to St. George in Vegas. Martin Luther King had been murdered, and, all the riots that broke out. And just being in high school with the riots, seemed like every week we had a riot break out and the police had to come. But I went through that, and I got through that because of people that cared about me, and speaking of Coach Allred and his wife, Elaine. And then I went to San Francisco for the summer and stayed with my uncle. It was Palo Alto, just south of San Francisco. I started playing up at Stanford. I met a couple of guys that invited me. I started playing out at San Jose State. And then I started playing in leagues, one at a high school, one at San Jose State, one at another college that was in that area. Before you know it, the head coach for Stanford University wants to talk to me. And he says, I really like where you play and what have you, and I would like to recruit you, but we don't think that you can come here after 1 year, that you got to graduate from your school. But we wanted you to come and go to Menlo College. And we can keep an eye on you, take care of you while you're here. And I thought about it, but I don't know this man. He doesn't know me. And I thought about the loyalty that Coach Allred and his wife had shown me, and then the people that I came to know that first year who, treated me fairly. I didn't ask for anything special, but they treated me fairly. Coach treated me, special, him and his wife, but I was their son. And so I told a guy, I said, you can recruit me after I finish at St. George, but I'm not going to a school up here. I don't know that coach. He doesn't know me. You want me, but you want to hide me here. And so I went back to St. George. And things changed dramatically. We had a great team. We had a lot of sophomores who had been freshmen on the year before that didn't really flourish. And Coach, after we had a great season, I was, what was that, the king I don't know what it's called. I had to look at my book. But I was named the king of the court, right? And the female that was the queen of the court, she didn't treat me badly. She respected me and didn't think that I shouldn't have been that. And everything was good. I mean, I met a lot of people and a lot of friends, and many that I still stay in touch with. In fact, Val Jones, I just sent him a signed basketball. His son-in-law got in touch with my son on Facebook and had him tell me that he wanted to get the ball for his father-in-law, and he told me who he was. And he said he didn't really believe that his father-in-law played with me. And so we contacted each other, and I told him, I said, "Yo, your father, I think, had the record at St. George for points in the game. I want to say like 51 points, but that was coach's fault. I'm going to let you know right off the bat." We played some Utah school. I think it's called Utah Trade now,
Right.
but they were a little small school back then. And we played them in St. George. We beat them by 66 points. Crazy. So now the season goes on, and we're going to play
Rick's.
Rick's College, but we have them in the end. We have Weber's Utah State freshmen, and we have them, and then we have Rick's. So we play Utah State freshmen. We all play. Now, Coach wants to give us a day off so we could be rested and fresh. See, that load management was going on with Coach before he even knew what it meant. And so we don't play against this Utah school, and all the guys that played, and Val Jones goes, he's making every shot. They can't guard him. And we get the lead, but we don't have a big lead. And so ultimately they win the game, and Coach is steaming. He's mad at himself, really, because we were begging him to put us in the game and just let us run the clock out, but he wasn't doing that. It worked out because we went up to Rick's and we beat them and won the championship of the league. But Coach was a different person on the court than he was off the court. He was. I told him there were some things that he did that he would have been fired or in jail. He made guys cry after the game. He was just tough. And for me, that was how all the coaches that I played for as a kid were. They tough. They taught you to be responsible. They didn't mince punishment when you didn't do what you were supposed to do, didn't go to class, didn't finish some work, whatever it was. And that was the same way I had it at home with my grandmother. My grandmother was just like that. She didn't pull any punches. So I got along with Coach great. And I think once people realized that Coach was for us and that he wanted us to be the best we could be. I remember that year, Coach, seeing you sit up in the stands talking to people that came to practice, and we're running, we're shooting around. We said, okay, let's get practice started. And we would go through all the drills that we knew that you wanted, that we normally did every day. And so I grew as a basketball player. I grew not to hate everybody that didn't look like me, and not to take it personally when things didn't go how I perceived they should have gone. Because, looking inward is always a biased, selfish viewpoint. And I had great Mark Gardner could shoot the ball. Kim Vernon could really shoot it, right? And we had a couple other guys that were solid, and we wound up going to the national tournament. We beat the two best Arizona schools, Scottsdale and Arizona Western, back to back, and went to the national final. So, I got to really learn about recruiting, because everybody and their mother were there trying to recruit me. I used to make them take 3 or 4 of my guys to lunch with me when they wanted to talk to me. Coach doesn't know about that. And we also had a tornado warning, and Coach didn't know about that. But me, Gary Barber, Mark Gardner, and I can't remember who the fourth guy was. We all used to sleep in, we had a room with 2 beds and 2 to a bed. we had been out and we came back. It was pitch black. The sirens were going, and we go in a room and we all in one bed. All four of us cover up over our head like that's going to protect us. But through that whole process, I grew as a person. I grew in learning how to have relationships with many different types of people, you know, and because we also had Native Americans on campus. We had Hispanic kids on campus. We had the Samoans and the Hawaiians on campus. So, and we also had the Arabs on campus, you know, and so I had interaction with all of these people in this little small environment that nobody would have said that that was the ideal place to go to grow as a person, but I did, and it was wonderful, and I met and had great friends, and that's how I got there, and that's why I stayed, and I would do it all over again.
Lionel, that is so beautiful how you've shared all of that. And there's lots more that we'd like to hear. I wonder if we could have Coach Allred, maybe he can give his rebuttal now. Not that it's a rebuttal, but let him respond to the things that you've said and share some stories as well.
Lionel, as I sit here listening to you, I'm filled with emotions, which is probably normal. I'm trying to think how to concise this thing so that I don't ramble on, but as I was looking at you and watch you talking, I thought of four things. Your intelligence, your honesty shows up in everything you do, your humbleness, and you know where you came from. It shows up in your character. I think of your beautiful grandma. I think of the night that you asked me to induct you into the Nevada Hall of Fame. And that beautiful wife of yours, Angie, and your grandmother sitting there, your humility shows up along with your intelligence. And by the way, you was a good athlete. And that's about the way I've always felt about you. I'm emotional. I love you. You made a believer out of me.
Doug, could you maybe share some of those as Lionel was considering coming to St. George and as you were?
Let me tell you, Lloyd Booth had coached up at Richfield in the middle of the state. Maybe his first year out of school, I don't know, but I knew he was there at Richfield while I was over at Delta. And I don't remember playing him, but I somehow, whether it was at a coaching school or whatever it was, I knew Lloyd. And I knew when he went to Rancho, and so I felt, and then I went down to the state tournament, and I had seen Lionel and Rancho High School play. And then Lloyd invited me to come down. And I remember going down to Rancho High School, and Lloyd had gathered up Lionel along with Willie Hall and Big Frank Jefferson. Yeah, Andy Gangwer was there. But anyway, they were crowded into Lloyd Booth's little office. And the thing that indelibleized in my mind more than anything was a pair of old black shoes that you had on. I don't know whether you remember that, but
My assistant coach gave them to me.
Yeah. But I invited you up, the group of you. I didn't think you'd come. Lloyd indicated that you was quiet. You didn't know whether you wanted to leave home or not, and I didn't know whether we'd get you up there, but when you came, I was excited because I knew of your talent, didn't know you, but I knew you as a gifted athlete. And I thanked Lloyd. I've thanked him many times for what he did for me and for you. I thanked his brother, Craig, but like I said, it was Lloyd Booth and the prompting that he gave me, and then when I got to meet you, and I felt very, very fortunate, as everybody else did in St. George, that we got you here, Lionel. And like I said, even today I can go around town. A kid come up to me in church the other day, and I didn't recognize him. He says, "You know me?" And I said, "I think so. We do knew in our ward." And he said, "Well, I played softball on the intramural team with Lionel." Yeah, and all he wanted to talk about for about 30 minutes in church, and before it started, was how much he thought of you as a basketball player. And you know, Lionel, I can still go around town, and I've told people this, and most of them believe me. You could come here and run for mayor, and you'd get elected, because there's an element of people here in the community that all they want to talk about is not so much about the points you scored, but when they got to know you, you was an attraction. I love you, pal.
It's so gratifying to be able to sit here and to hear the two of you talk to each other. As we were going through all this, I'm thinking, Lionel, about when you left St. George and went on to Arizona State and then on to the NBA, and you're an NBA champion as a player. You're an NBA champion as a coach. All of that amazing success in your life. As you look back at all of that, are there aspects of your experience here in Southern Utah that were key to your future success?
Let me tell you, he radiates the spirit that so many people around here that I don't talk to, but the impression that you've left on the people in the community is really something unique. And I thank Lyman and for letting me be a part of this, because, like I said, we radiate a lot of the feelings in the community. And like I say, I'm so proud of you and think the world of you and Angie and the fine family you've raised.
But Lyman, going to your question, it's what I said earlier. It encompassed growth. It encompassed seeing the world in a different light instead of a narrow viewpoint. And that there are a lot of people that don't look like me, didn't even come from my environment, that could befriend me or be close to me and do things for me that maybe even people in my neighborhood wouldn't do. And that's what I say about Coach. That's why I love him so much, is the fact that he did things that, as I went on, I never had a coach. Coach Wolk was I was close to, but when I got to the NBA, I never had a coach that I had a personal relationship with at the time that I was with them. Jack Ramsey, I became close with after I quit playing and he quit playing. But he quit coaching. But just learning how to be a man, growing up and maturing, and I still wasn't fully mature, but I was so much further when I left than when I came. And that's, to me, what school is about. And it's also, I tell coaches when I go to clinics, a coach's responsibility, especially a college coach, is to be the bridge from adolescence to adulthood, to reaffirm all that some kids have learned at home, and then to affirm and encourage and influence all the kids that didn't get that. Like, I never had a father, but I had coaches. And I had in my mind the coaches that helped me flourish, the ones that held me accountable, the ones that made me do what everybody else did. Because Coach Booth used to tell me, you got unbelievable talent. You can go to college, you can do this. But he didn't treat me that way. And Coach Allred did not do that. Coach Wolf did not do that. And so that just kept me on that trajectory to manhood inside a plain lane that was narrow that I needed in order to flourish once I left them. But I don't know, basketball wise, it was a blast. Coach was a good teacher. And we had players that were very high intelligent that last year there that could play, and we played together. We liked each other. So that was all beautiful.
Wait a minute, Lionel. Why don't you tell them about the time you threw the basketball left-handed down the length of the floor? We were scrimmaging, and I don't know what went wrong, but Lionel took the ball out, and he's left-handed, and he whistled the ball down the floor about 90 miles an hour. It missed Mark Gardner's head, hit the west door of the gym, about broke it. I told Lionel to get off the floor. He goes in the dressing room. I told him to get off the floor and get out of there. He gets in the dressing room, and I can hear the lockers banging. And I don't know what he was doing in there, but he stormed out the door, and I thought I'd never see him again. And the next day, he shows up to practice like nothing had happened. Walked in, and that was the end of that, wasn't it?
That was the end of it. I think I tell young players and I tell young people, you can't hold on to past issues, whether it's where you grew up, how you were treated, mistreated, because your beginning doesn't determine your destiny. Only God does. But if you keep holding on to that, you will not be able to receive God's blessings, because you're waddling in what somebody did to you previously. I could talk about all those things because they're facts, but they don't hold me from going forward and being what I was created to be.
When you think back to this place where we're sitting today under these red ledges and black lava mesas, and this place called St. George, and this institution where you came to school, what are some of the images or the feelings or the thoughts that are in your heart as you think about it?
Well, where it was then, how quaint it was, quiet, small, right there around the university. And then when I go back and I see it's all up over the mountains, down from the valleys, the new airport, and the golf courses everywhere. And I'm like, wow. I was like, I don't even know if I could have come there now and flourished in the same environment that I had when I was there. It might have overwhelmed me. But being this little quaint city, I could walk around. I mean, I walk over to the rodeo stadium, walk downtown, just by myself, thinking and reflecting, and always trying to think about, what am I going to do, and where am I going? And St. George was the perfect place for that. And the people that were in my life were the perfect people for my life. And a lot of the people, like the guys I play with, I'm not close with all of them. I've reconnected with Mark Gardner, I reconnected with Val, and then with Kim Vernon. But we're not in daily touch. I don't go see them, and they don't come see me. But we have that bond that was together while I was there, because it was a big part of being where Dixie College is not Dixie College, where it's now Utah Tech. It went from a junior college to a four-year school to a Division I school, built a new gym, built football facilities, built baseball facilities. And it all comes from the foundation that all of us at that point had laid with the success we had, and the social part that can't be understated. It's not to be dominating a conversation, but it was a big part of getting other kids from Las Vegas to come to go to school in St. George, and which just build up the population of the school, not just athletes coming, but students that just came that wanted to go to school. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I'm proud to have been a part of that. And I wish that I'd come back to St. George when it was that little sleepy city and invested in all that real estate. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Well, it's so awesome how you have shared that, and I think about how, I mean, you've talked mostly about this place and this institution and its effect on you. We could talk for more hours about your impact and your effect on this place and this community. And when you talk about those changes that you've just talked about, those were just starting to happen when you came here. And I think that your being here and what you did here was part of that launching effect for this community to move forward. And I'm not trying to overstate anything. I'm just saying that if you look at the history and you look at those pivotal points, your being here meant a great deal to this community and to its future. On behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for that.
Well, I want to say thank you to St. George, Dixie College, and the people, and obviously Coach Allred and his wife, Sherry Atkins, and some others that aren't on my brain at the moment. But, what St. George continued to give me voice and confidence. They invited me back to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Coach retired my number. They invited me back to do commencement, which I had never done. And I got to stand up before all these students and prepare a speech to motivate them and inspire them for the future. I get invited back to MC when they go from mid-major school or Division II to Division I. And, all of those things are attached to me as learning opportunities and growth opportunities. So even after I left and when I came back, I was still provided with opportunities to grow.
Thank you. Thank you, Lionel. Coach Allred, should we give you the last word?
As you was talking, Lionel, I think of so many opportunities that we all had to thank you and to appreciate what you was. Like has been shown today, I think that your intelligence and your humility, along with your athletic ability, is such that we're all proud of you. Doggone it.
And I appreciate it, Coach. I appreciate that. And a lot of my friends are gone, some at a real young age. And the people who were naysayers saying that I wouldn't be, including the coach at UNLV at the time, that wouldn't even offer me a scholarship, including the coach that was at Rancho before Coach Booth came that would not give me an opportunity to be on the varsity. Those things were fuel for me doing, not to show them up, but to prove to myself that I could do it. And I tell young people, victims can never be victors. You can't call and want people to do for you and blame people for everything that has happened, whether it be to your race, whether it be to your community or whatever. You have to step up and go do, because you have the ability. God gave everybody a brain, as my grandmother always told me. Use it for yourself. Don't let somebody else use their brain to tell you what to do. And also the fact that when adversity comes, you got to lean on your faith in God to see you through, because he says he was in his word. And I don't think too many people believe that, but there could be no success without adversity, because you have to fail and then you get back up and you're stronger. If you don't get back up, you're just going to be a victim. But when you get back up, you're stronger, and you fall again, you get back up, you fall again. Before you know it, you've reached success. And I tell coaches, quit trying to be an NBA assistant coach. If you heard a high school coach there, be the best high school coach you can be. Learn. It's not like you're in a position where you're just, overwhelming the job with your talent. You can always learn. And as I tell my granddaughter, you know a lot, but you don't know everything.
Lionel, this has been such a special, just a treasured hour. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your heart and sharing these stories and wisdom. We appreciate it so much.
So take care.
Thank you.
The Doc Booth Foundation is dedicated to empowering individuals through educational opportunities and promoting mental health advocacy. Through scholarships and funding for important community needs, the foundation perpetuates the can-do spirit of the founders of this community, using the lessons of the past to chart the course for a better future. Make your tax-deductible donation at docboothfoundation.org. Not Forgotten is produced by Ricky Valadez and made possible by the generous support of St. George Area Zag Stores, industry-leading tech support and accessories. Lyman Hafen's books can be found at lymanhafen.com.
Once I lived in Cottonwood and owned a little farm. When they called me down to Dixie, it caused me much alarm. To hoe the cane and cotton, I right away must go. But the reason why they sent me, I'm sure I do not know.